Good morning, everybody. I know we have a bit of a mix of new people to LiveCosts and then probably some current customers. So I hope you get some benefit from this. But really, this is just coming from what we see every day going into SMBs, and the recommendations maybe that we make to have systems in place that we can actually learn from. A little bit about LiveCosts. Wait a second. So today we'll just run through a bit of an intro, who we are, what is job costing, and then essentially how we do it. And we will show you a little bit around the software as well, and how we actually set up these jobs for some detailed job costing. We'll do that, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. So if there's any particular questions that you want me to address, we're happy to do that as long as we have the time. So I'm Niall. I'm the product owner at LiveCosts. Really, all that means is I'm the guy who drives the product forward, who really listens to feedback every day. So the current customers will know me well. I do all the training and implementation, and I do that to learn from the companies, to understand how to do things today, and maybe introduce more efficient ways of doing that. My background is construction. I started as a carpenter, project manager, business owner, so I know the pain. I know the pain well. LiveCosts currently tracks about 5,000 projects to the tune of around $1 billion in project value. So we are in about 5 regions across the world, and we track all sorts of costs, including your material costs. We're backed by Enterprise Ireland and some global leaders in the investment space that help us to invest in the software and build the software for the future. Okay, so what is job costing? So job costing, in my opinion, is just a more detailed method of calculating costs, and best used for projects, so in the unique world of projects, and it just requires really fastidious record keeping and accounting for every item. Okay, so how do we pick up all these items that we spend and really apply them to the project? That's every type of expense, our work, our hours, and any expenses that are related to a specific project. So what we tend to see, and like we've gone into hundreds of companies at this point, and what we tend to see is, people, they're very well established business. They know exactly what they're doing. What we tend to see is a lot of Excel. So you may have an accounting software in place, and you might even have in that accounting software, tracking categories kind of set up for tracking the cost to an individual project. But generally, we find that it's not fit for purpose, and it ends up back in Excel. Our experience of Excel is, and there's data out there on this, that nearly 90% of Excel sheets contain errors, which is a pretty scary thing if you're basing your profitability on that. And it does tend to be quite a labor-intensive exercise then to continue to add the cost then to that Excel sheet. So what are we looking for? In a detailed job cost, like there obviously are benefits to that. So we're really just creating a system for efficient resource allocation. So what does that mean? Well, we just want to create workflows and processes that the employees in the business understand that when we receive a cost, that we can actually allocate it to the right project. So we get an understanding of those project costs. As I say, today we see that being done in accounting softwares where we're trying to tag it with a project, or simply, taking the costs in, the invoice in, whatever it may be, and applying that cost to an Excel sheet. We want to create a clear and repeatable process, across your project. So, something needs to be simple, something that your employees, your accounts admin, your project managers need to understand. A simple system for allocation. That's what we want to achieve, and that will, give you the maximum benefit. We want to improve decision making with advanced budget control. So what do we mean? So we want to understand, a lot of the time we see these Excel sheets or we see allocation within the accounting software. And that's great. It'll give us a read on essentially where we are on the project, but it can tend to do it too late, so you may set a budget, for a project for 200 grand. Okay, that's great. And then we start allocating costs to that 200 grand. And we really don't realize that we're over budget until we reach the end of the project. So if we allow, more detailed budgets, we get to understand maybe budget creep slightly earlier in the project, which means it can change our decision making. If we go over budget I'll give you an example, maybe the groundworks, element of a project. It just gives us an opportunity to, through the project, to maybe make different decisions that maybe allow us to catch back up on that budget. Also, how variations may impact that budget would be another area that would be quite important as well. Control and profitability throughout the project life cycle. Yeah, so pretty much what I'm saying, it's not just about the project being profitable. I mean, that's okay to know that 200K project is profitable at the end. That's great, because a lot of business we go into maybe don't even have that. They're really looking at the bank account and judging the performance of the company based on the bank account. But, with detailed job analysis, we're not just looking at the 200K, we're looking at the 20K in the groundworks or in the first fix, and understanding, was that element of the project profitable? And it just allows us then to dig in maybe in the future and see, if groundworks is constantly going over, well, then maybe we should do something about that. Maybe we should change how we do things, and that can be going back to the estimate and increasing our pricing, or, maybe changing how we do the site element of these things. And it's really powerful. Like, we have people that would come to us after using maybe LiveCosts for a few months, and it just changes the way they think. It changes that they look at the individual elements now rather than the whole project, and understand which elements are profitable within the project, which ones aren't. Adjust those, and it just changes. It has the potential to change how you think of these projects. Okay, and then we were talking about maybe data collection for future estimates, and that's that learning. We're applying the learning of these individual budgets or elements within the project, and it just gives us that ability to look back on future projects then, and have the learnings there that we can take forward then to our future estimates. Okay, so how does LiveCosts deal with that? So we'll run through a couple of scenarios, just show you a little bit around the software and how we do that. So what we do in LiveCosts is essentially we give you project-centric accounting, which really is just giving you a place to for your projects to live. So if we hop over to LiveCosts here. We have a section for all of your projects, of course, and then within those projects, we are essentially then tracking what happens. So, as you're creating these invoices or creating commitments through your purchase orders, or, adding labor costs or tracking labor costs, we're essentially building the reports then in the background to give you that sort of detail. And so what we tend to do on setup is we tend to encourage the company to set up individual kind of templates. So the templates would be a reflection of how you want your budgets structured. So we have lots of different types of structures. We have simple structures where you would have individual phases. Like, a lot of my stuff is set up for a builder, but this software is used for landscapers, tilers, plumbers, electricians. It doesn't really matter. In this case, I'm just setting up a structure. It's a repeatable structure that would be used on every project. All projects are different, but there is a lot of commonality between them. In this particular structure, I'm saying, look, we would have prelims, substructure, block work, this kind of thing, and we're essentially setting up a structure then that's repeatable on all projects. And it just becomes, it's breeding familiarity, that when somebody uses the software or somebody's making allocations, well, phase 6 or budget number 6 is always electrics, and we always know that, and it really never changes then across the project. So we encourage that. So when you're creating these individual projects, then we have a very simple workflow. So you would come in, give it a say, simple project, give it a name, give it a start date, set a contract value, so we can record income against that project. Set a delivery address, we'll just say Dublin in this case. Okay, nice and easy. Say the project that gives us a project. What we would do then is use those templates, those common, templates then to build those individual budgets. So at this point, we're really just setting, okay, look, if we are in substructure, what is the expected cost on that? Generally, that cost is X VAT, X profit, X overhead. What is the raw cost? So, if this budget arrives in, if we're under this budget, essentially, we know that we're covered for our overheads, we're covered for our profit on that particular project. So we would set the budget for each of those individual elements and then start tracking costs against those elements. Okay, so saving them off. Okay, so you can kind of see what's happening. We're setting 100K for substructure. Now we're really just awaiting then to receive costs. And receiving costs is the stuff that you're already doing. You're already doing maybe purchase orders. And those purchase orders may not be from a software. They might be an email to a subcontractor saying, yeah, we're okay with that quote, and we would accept that quote. All we're doing is bringing those emails essentially into the software and making them visible. So when we set, let's say electrics here, for example, when we set a budget, we say, okay, we're allowing 10K here, again, X overhead, X profit. We're setting a 10K budget here, for example. So when we issue those contracts, then we can clearly see, okay, this is what we issued to the electrician, for example. And then we will track through time, all of the invoices then that arrive in against that budget then to see how that individual budget performs. Okay, so moving on to the next page, which is detailed budget analysis. So this is unique to each company. Again, so we say we're going into builders, we're going into plumbers, electricians. This is unique to your company. Okay, so this may come from a bill of quantities, it may come from how you structure your estimate, or it can be very, very simple insofar as it could just be breaking down into maybe labor, materials, plant and machinery, subcontract, and other, and even that alone, although it's simple to allocate to, it's still breaking down that overall budget into something much smaller and just seeing how each element performs. So you're really just sanity checking your own estimates. Okay. This can be simple, as I say, or it can be a lot more detailed, and it comes down to, I suppose, the resources you have and the results that you want. The results that you want being the actual reports themselves. So we can get quite detailed, right? We can jump into a project and we can say, general requirements, and then within site construction element here, we could have, you see the detail that we have here. That depends on, I would say, who you have to make those allocations. If you have somebody in your office, maybe in procurement, maybe they're a quantity surveyor, they will understand the allocations better than an invoice just arriving into somebody who's in accounts payable. And them trying to allocate to these individual budgets is difficult without somebody having that prior knowledge. So it does depend on, how detailed you get is, the resources that you have in place that understand that. And again, I'll go back to, keeping it simple is probably the best way initially, and then you can kind of grow into more detailed structures as you understand the allocations. Accurately assigning costs, then yes, I mean, as far as LiveCosts is concerned, our current customers will be well aware of this, that through creating purchase orders within the system, we're creating commitments, so we can see if we create a commitment on this particular project. So let's say, we're looking at this Hall's Head as an example. Hall's Head is here. And we can start to see, okay, this is a sort of a different structure, but in groundworks, we have a 270K budget. And what we've attributed to that so far is 114K roughly, okay? Within that, then we have each individual allocation and what it's made up of. So in this case, we have different types of allocations. We have purchase orders, we have credit notes, we have invoices, so we can clearly see our commitments here. All of the purchase orders that are out there in the world, and we can see them here against the project budget as soon as they're issued. So that's taking them out of email and just applying them to an individual budget. Then we can kind of clearly see our approved costs. So stuff that maybe has arrived in from invoice, credit notes, that kind of thing, everything that's associated with that. So you can kind of see that if something did go over budget, we have all of the data there to dive into. I'd say we're not doing that at project level, we're doing it at the individual element level. Okay, so it'll give you that learning. Data collection then, yeah, so I mean, we obviously with this sort of data, on groundworks, for example, we will store the completed projects here, for all time, so anytime you look back on your history, you will have all of that project, all of the individual data then, so all of your previous quotes from subcontractors, all of your commitments to those subcontractors, all the material value of those individual elements. So very, very useful for going back on a course and for your future projects. Okay, so, yeah, and the basis, I suppose, is that, like, what we find is that when we go into these SMBs, that all of this is being done. It's not as if this is new. It's not as if that they're all over the place or anything like that. It's not that. They're very, very organized companies, and it's just giving a process to it. It's just nailing down a process. Say, okay, this is how it's done, and giving them a simple way to do that. So taking them out of Excel, trying to take them out of email, and this is quite a collaborative software. Because we have those, say, quantity surveyors feeding in and setting up the structure of the project. Okay, and with that then comes the reports from the project. We have maybe site foreman feeding in with labor hours. We have so we have the mobile app here as well, if I can show that. There's a second. I'll just click into the mobile app here. So we have the mobile app, which would feed in information too. So for example, we want to add in some labor hours. We say, okay, this particular person is on this project, and we're again digging into the individual budget, setting the hours, and then sending those hours back in. So we have details coming in from site. We have quantity surveyors maybe creating purchase orders. Doesn't have to be quantity surveyors, it could be anybody in the business. We have accounts payable then processing invoices in here too, and all of that is giving you the result of seeing the cost allocation or allocating the costs in a live way. And the benefit is, of course, every time the software sees a new cost, it's being added directly to the project, directly to the budget, of course, within that project. And then it just gives us the benefit then of being able to report on things live. So we have project logs, every cost that's ever happened. We have the breakdown of those costs then into those individual phases, how they're performing against their budget, and the split then across various different cost types. So we can even break it down further then to say, okay, of the groundworks, what is the individual, the labor costs or the material costs, and that's all pretty much customizable. I think that's it from me. I think I've spoken enough. I think it gives you a good idea of at least the benefits of it. As I say, most companies we go into are already doing this, and this just provides a really simple system to actually carry that out. But of course, I believe in it. I believe that there's massive benefit, and I do believe that by breaking the projects down in this way, it just gives us more learning. It's certainly something that came from my own experience, which was building one-off houses for me. I was really unsure in my example was I was always unsure if I was making money in the ground, before the ground floor slab. I was really unsure of that. I'd say, yeah, I'm not sure. And I just never got to it, I never got to it. And for me, that learning would have really helped to understand, say, well, okay, I know I'm doing okay in these projects, but I'm losing money in certain areas. Now it's time to address that. So I think that for me, it certainly would have benefited. Just float back over to our slides. So any questions, in Pat?
Okay, thanks very much, Niall. That was very informative, as always. So basically, I have a few direct questions sent to me. So it's, do you want the easy ones or the hard one for us?
Let's get the hard ones over, I suppose.
So the difficult one is, should the budget structure exactly match the summary page from the bill of quantities? I hope I got that right, by the way, Tom.
Yeah, no, it sounds, it does sound right to me. Yes and no is the answer. That the summary page is a great it's a great start, because this is where we benefit from the work that's gone into the estimate. Like, a lot of work's gone into the estimate to get it right, and the summary page does break down those costs into individual elements. Which is great, and largely that will do you, like, it might give you, like, let's say, the groundwork element and individual things like that. The only part where it might get slightly strange is, the example I would have would be, say, the likes of plastering, for example, or painting is another one. You're creating budgets for, let's say, the roof, for example, and in the bill of quantities that may contain plastering elements, like plasterboarding, skimming, whatever it might be, and within that, and equally it may contain painting. But that's really not how things happen on site. So what we would recommend is that we would try to break that down into the individual element, being the plastering element of that. So that, if we are going to issue a purchase order out into the world, we're issuing it clearly into one individual element, and then we track against that individual element. So I would say 90% of the bill of quantities will be in that structure that you need, but there's just those elements that you need to be aware of to say you may need to take out. As I say, plastering and painting are a good example of that.
And of course, this is also reflected in charts, is it not?
Yeah, so we have obviously the breakdowns. All of the breakdowns are available. We're reporting on that. We're reporting on that split as well. Like, so we can go to a project here, report on, the income versus the contract value, the cost versus the budget, how those costs are broken down across the cost types, how your individual budget is performing. You can do that at phase level too. So we can dig into the groundworks element of that particular project and still get the same results. And all of that data is there for you. Yeah, absolutely.
I also have another one that says, can you add extra tracking categories?
Extra tracking categories in the context of an accounting software?
Yes.
Yeah. So tracking categories, like we tend to, if we do take on new companies, they may have structures within their accounting software that they want to keep, especially when they take LiveCosts on early. So we would import the likes of their accounts. So obviously we would be taking the invoices in here, allocating them to the individual budgets, and then once we're kind of through the workflow of allocating them, we would post them to accounts. So we would take in the nominal codes or the accounts from the accounting software, just in the purpose of, we're going to be posting to the accounts. We want to send it over with the accurate information. Included in that would be tracking categories. So we can pull in tracking categories. Like, so it depends on your accounting software. Each one is different. In the case of Xero, we can pull in tracking categories. In the case of QuickBooks, we can pull in locations and classes, and then obviously set those locations and classes then, and when we push the information then across to accounts.
Thank you, Niall. And my final one is how can you have multiple templates for projects? Sorry, is the way it's worded.
Yeah, no limit, no, absolutely no limit on the number of templates, you know, the number of templates that you have. And we have a couple of different types of templates. So you can have that kind of basic structure that I was talking about there. And then you can also then have, it's a pretty new structure, which is the division structure, where you can create those individual divisions and then within them those phases. So there's no limit on the amount of templates that you can create in the software. Equally, no limit on the amount of projects that you can create. It's not the way we charge you. You can create as many projects as you wish. So, you know, we would see very, very small projects from, a couple of €1,000 for, call out jobs to multi-million, projects. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, so and that's a good point, actually, Niall, isn't it? Is that, you know, like you can have it as complicated and
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, it depends on what you want, as I would say. You know, you've got to think about saying, like, what are the learnings at the end that I want? You know, what do I want to sit down at the end when I'm doing a post-mortem on a project? What do I want? You know, do I want to see just one number, or do I want to see it broken down by X? And that X will be whatever your company, it'll be unique to your company. You know, how can we learn from this project? Like, how, you know, is it good enough to say we had a 200K project and we spent 190? Is that good enough? Is there any learnings in that? We, like, you know, for me, it's, well, okay, we were on budget, fine, no problem at all. But which part's more profitable than the other? You know,
yeah,
can we improve the profitability? You know, can we dig into that 190K even if we're on budget? So it shouldn't be about disaster planning.
yeah,
It should be about taking a learning from something and saying, well, actually, you know, like when we, do the groundwork element or the build element, we really make money at that point. But it's actually the finishing element of it that we're not doing so well in. So you could be doing really well in one area of the project, not so good in another, and overall you still are under budget. But what's the learning in that then? You know, so it's just coming up with a way that your company can kind of dig into even successful projects and say, actually, let's make it more successful. Okay? Let's make, better decisions and better, and let's do it based on some data.
sure. I just have a quick question after popping in the main chat. In setting up a template with all subbies, how does materials directly bought get applied then?
Yeah, so I suppose it's back to, again, with whatever way you want to set this up. Like, so we can set up, it may be, if we look at a simple project, for example, we have this brickwork and blockwork element, okay, and that element could be, depending on your situation, could be the subcontractor is totally providing all of the materials and all of the labor in that. That's pretty easy. You know, we would just allocate then, single purchase order and track the individual invoice in it. It could be a case where you are providing the materials and you have a subcontract element for the labor. And that's okay. You know, we can do that in two ways. We could create an element for brickwork and blockwork. And you'll notice then within the brickwork and blockwork element, we have cost types, which would say, okay, well, just show me the material element. So this is, as we're creating purchase orders, as we're booking in invoices, we're giving things a cost type. So you would say, okay, well, show me within this 100K, show me the material element of it. Or within this 100K, show me the subcontract element of it. Or air labor, air direct labor element of it, or air subcontract element of it. So it just gives you that ability to break down the individual element into further breaking it down into individual cost types. So there's a number of different ways you could do it. You could have a subcontract phase for brickwork and blockwork, and then a material phase for brickwork and blockwork, or you could have it all contained within the one phase and use the cost types then to break it down.
I hope that answers your question there, Niall. Okay, that's it. I have no other direct questions to me or open questions in the chat, so I think we can wrap it there. I suppose basically just thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Niall, for the presentation. Very informative as always. And guys,
anybody does have any questions come in, more than happy for myself or Pat to answer them. Support at LiveCosts.com, or you can directly email me at Niall at LiveCosts.com. Anything that you're
A copy of this recording or a link to this recording can be available as well if you contact us. Okay. So thank you, folks, and until next time, Slán.